BNB Sparky Series. We've got Brad Rodgers in the house tonight. We're going back to the Sparky Series format. So this one's for the tradies, but more specifically for the Sparkies. Let's rip in. Brad Rodgers, welcome to Beers and Banter.
Thanks to be here, mate. Absolute pleasure.
So I've revived the Sparky Series format. So this one's for the Sparkies. I've got a lot of Sparky contacts, but I reckon tonight's content will probably suit the most tradies, I would say. But I thought with everything going on in the world, you're the perfect man to speak to about what products are out there, what trends you're seeing in the safety side of things, and what a lot of businesses are going to have to implement now.
Yeah, well, it's been an interesting time. We've come through. Not through. We're still right in the guts of it in COVID, and it seems like it's starting to ramp up in some other areas as well. So it's been a really interesting time for safety gear. As you know, it's been in the media. I mean, you can see a bit of our product there, but it's been hot. These products, we do a lot of disposable masks. We do. Some eye protection that's been used heavily in medical, hand sanitizers, disposable coveralls. A lot of that sort of product has just been in such high demand. But it's been really hard to keep up with that as well because there's been some real serious issues with supply chain out of China as well. So it opens up another whole can of worms with, I suppose, risks to your business and risk to the economy and Australia as a whole.
And the weird one was tradies never stopped. I know some people are probably a little bit quieter than they were, but the industry didn't seem to slow down too much. Like there's still a lot of projects. It was almost like the government wanted something happening, and it was the tradies that kept it going. How did you handle that supply chain? Do you start to think about local manufacturing, or do you start? How do you start to deal with those suppliers?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and it's a question we toss around the boardroom amongst the management group quite a lot over the last few months. You've probably seen a lot in the media around the government, especially in Queensland, investing in local manufacturing. You've seen, I suppose, the government actually asking for a lot of local manufacturers to pivot quickly and try and find a way to actually make those supplies that are really desperately needed, especially in the medical field.
I was getting my hand sanitizer from a distillery around the corner.
There you go. That's one perfect example. So that's been a real challenge, and what's been great to see is those local manufacturers who have been able to, like a distillery, to turn around and turn all their ethanol from good, beautiful alcohol into hand sanitizer.
Is that the 2020 word of the year? Pivot.
It could be.
It was like Bespoke from 2018.
Is that right?
Bespoke was pretty popular a couple of years ago, I reckon.
Yeah,
pivot. Everyone's had a pivot this year.
Well, they had that. They have, and a lot have done really well. And,
I think I'm playing netball. When someone says pivot, I think I'm netball.
Yeah, back to your netball days. Did you play netball?
A bit.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
Right. So I suppose just back to the COVID issue with supply chain and manufacturing. Yeah, there's a huge need in Australia to onshore critical, I suppose, supplies.
Yes.
With COVID, the borders shut effectively. China, India, the big manufacturing powerhouses closed their borders. They look after number one, that's themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a lot of trouble getting our supplies out of those countries. We're lucky as a business, Paramount Safety, have got a lot of long-standing relationships. So those suppliers were able to sort of filter probably more product than we usually would get through that sort of period of time compared to maybe some others.
And it depended on air freight versus sea freight too, because I don't know, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but the sea freight, there was a lot of ships and a lot of containers all tied up that couldn't be moved. And then I know that the company I work for, air freight became, because all the commercial flights stopped, a lot of the air freight goes in the belly of the passenger plane. Yeah. So all of a sudden, getting something air freighted out of China became really hard as well.
And ridiculously expensive. So we had a lot of people flying out masks and hand sanitizers and at ridiculous costs. And just the raw material costs around the world for a lot of our products, especially masks, spiraled 1,200-2,400% increases. So
Wow.
it was phenomenal. And couple that with a bit of air freight, it just it went through the roof. So from a business perspective, it's not only our business, but I'm sure there's a lot of other businesses, perhaps maybe yours. But I know there's a lot of businesses in our industry that are probably thinking, how do we navigate something like this in the future? What do we need to do? And local manufacturing has to form a certain part of it, but we've got to be realistic as well and sort of think that there's a reason why manufacturing moved offshore.
Yep.
And it's the cost of goods. It's the increase in the cost of in labour. But that obviously helps underpin a good economy here. So, but you've got to rely on low cost countries to get that particular product. So you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So
it's been consumer demand that's driven people offshore.
Yeah.
But for things to come back, everyone's got to be prepared to pay a bit more.
They do. And look, I've had a lot of discussions with people about this, and people are very patriotic, which is really good. And you see it on social media, support the Australian-owned, Australian-made product, and I absolutely agree with that. And as a business, we would love to be doing more of that, and we're actually actively trying to develop that sort of capability and become more vertically integrated. But when you actually talk to people about, perhaps I'll use a dust mask as an example, and sort of say, well, okay, I can do a box of dust masks out of China for X amount, but if I make it here, it's going to be maybe another third or a half on top of that. Would you still pay it? And I think they probably a lot of them sort of say, oh yeah, probably, But when push comes to shove, when costs, overheads, all that sort of stuff, that people are really aware of, they tend to go back to cheapest price wins.
Yeah.
So you've got to try and sell above and beyond price a lot of the times. But it's tough,
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what have been what have you seen a lot of movement on in your range? Like obviously you spoke about the masks and the overalls and stuff like that. Have you got anything specifically that you've got for Sparkies that you see them using a lot, or is it more general than that?
Yeah, look, it is pretty general. So Sparkies or electricians obviously have a quite unique risk at work, which is obviously working with live electricity, which electric shock. So depending on their working, look, I'm no Sparky, but I know there is a risk there, and they're with high voltage work. There's a certain set of PPE that they would need to use, which are insulating from that risk. Paramount Safety generally don't operate in that more niche area. We're more of the consumable, more generalised type product.
It's a misconception that Sparkies don't work hard. So
is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Because I'm looking at the hydration products that you've got and think they'd be critical for most Sparky vans, because if we're not digging holes, we're in the roof. And when you're in the roof, you can excuse me, you can lose a lot of fluid. So I would have thought that some of your hydration products would have been key for the electrical market, because nothing for you to lose, 4 or 5 litres.
Oh, mate, if you're up in a roof void and you might even have a suit on as well, depending on what you're dealing with, what sort of risks are up there, 4 or 5 litres easy in a couple of hours. So hydration, we call it sort of safety for the inside, is just as critical as what you've got on the outside of your body protecting
yourself. So what have you got specifically? What are those? What's that gear you've got there?
So Thorst here, we've got our electrolyte sachets. We've got one of our little drink bottles there. We've got some Thorst electrolyte icy poles.
They're the goods.
Just a little sample pack there. So for all the listeners out there today, we've got some goodies here to give away at the end of the show. So
perfect.
So Thorst was born back in about 2012.
Yeah.
We designed this product, I suppose, off the knowledge of a few people within the business. Myself and Tim Bird and Owen Hughes at that point in time were quite into our sports. As you know, we're active in surf life saving,
yes,
which is a bit of a passion of, I suppose, both of ours through the years.
Definitely.
So we saw some products out there that were good and they led the way, but we thought we could do this better. And a big part of Thorst was reducing the amount of sugar and focusing on hydration, more of a hypotonic solution. The reason being is providing this product to workers is critical, but workers generally will have time to actually stop and have breaks and get that fuel. What they don't replace is the amount of fluid that's lost and the electrolytes as a result. So Thorst has been going really well since then, and we've had David Rhodes come on board, and he sort of manages the category now. And as you know, David's pedigree is Olympic athlete, so it's just gone from strength to strength. So
that's really good. I would say that's something you need to throw in the truck, guys. Even the sachets are probably good because you maybe not got the ice blocks to
freeze down unless you've got your angles or your Wacos in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
But
wouldn't I love one of those work trucks with the big canopy on the back and the fridge?
Mate. You never know who might come on the show and sponsor those, mate.
That'd be good, yeah.
Absolutely.
Speaking of hydration, though, how's your beer going?
Well, mate, I think we need to crack one. So,
and how good's this? The guest brought the beers tonight.
The guest did bring the beer.
That's a trend I'd like to see continue, actually.
Just for those listeners, I'm not sure if it's a common occurrence, but Matt kindly offered, I'm not going to say, I'm not going to knock it back, but some Great Northerns. And I suppose I just wanted to be a bit more authentic,
this is your local brewery, really?
This is
from your hometown?
Stone and Wood from Byron Bay.
Yes.
So that's where I grew up.
Yeah.
Stone and Wood's probably. Well, I mean, it's won the Beer of the Year awards for a couple of years in a row, I think, in the last few years.
Going great. They're a favourite of the show.
Beautiful fruity beer. Great summertime drink. So
very good. Thank you.
Pleasure, mate.
So, what else have we got in there? Some gloves there for pulling cables, maybe.
So, look. I suppose when you talk about Sparkies and general safety gear, there's a lot of products that are used across the board.
Eye protection.
So I mean, you've got your in here. You've got some specs. You've got your hearing protectors. You've got gloves. So I suppose the way I would work or our business would work in terms of recommending particular products is not really specifically on the occupation you do. It's actually on the application.
Yes. Okay.
So it's looking at what are you actually doing and what's the risk that's involved. So I suppose when you're thinking about electricians, there's perhaps probably quite a lot of applications or tasks that they're actually doing, but some of those might be actually fine motor skills, putting wires in through walls and stripping cable or whatever with pliers. So you actually might need, if you do need hand protection, if you're using, wire snips or Stanley knives or whatever, you might need a little bit of cut protection, but you actually might still need some tactile sensitivity or some dexterity.
It was something that I hard for me when I went from like a residential environment to like a mining environment where gloves are mandatory, and I'd never worked with gloves on my hands in my life. Thankfully, the tools it's not as intricate, but it's definitely weird to get used to working with gloves when you haven't previously, but. Yes, those little small, intricate jobs that'd be very hard to do in gloves, but then there's plenty of applications where it is better.
Oh, for sure. Well, I suppose gloves sort of started with the traditional leather riggers gloves.
Yeah,
and
you can't work in them.
Mate, they're still pretty popular. The traditional old boys out there, mate, they love a leather riggers glove. It's like an old leather work boot. You put it on and you don't want to take it off, So they're good to a certain extent, but you lose your dexterity and they don't have any cut resistance. So whilst there's a lot of gloves out there these days, but they all serve a particular purpose for certain risks and applications. So I would say with any safety gear is look at what you're actually doing, what's the risks involved, and then find the particular products that are actually going to match that. And there's a whole set of sort of standards and markings that you'll find on gloves and safety specs and hearing protectors and whatnot, which will sort of help you choose the right product for that particular risk.
Sparky's find himself on the roof quite often.
Yep.
What do you guys got in that space?
So I'll just give you a bit of background to Paramount Safety. So I have been blessed to work for Paramount Safety, which is an Aussie-owned company owned by the Bird family. Started back in '92. So we're coming up to a couple of years off 30 years.
Yeah,
which
that's
is
huge.
Which is fantastic. I've been with the business since 2004. So I've been around a little while.
Started as a 14-year-old.
Mate, close to that. Don't look too much older than that these days either, mate. But started in gloves, in recycling gloves, laundering gloves, and then moved into importing, basic hand protection, and then moved into eyewear, respiratory. So in 2004, actually, the year I started, we developed Paramount Safety is the parent company, and underneath Paramount Safety is our range of brands. So we've got Thorst, we've got Pro-Choice, which is, I suppose, the biggest brand in the business, which represents a whole host of different subcategories in eye protection, hand protection, hearing, hand protection. We've got, when you talk about height safety products, I bought a little kit here there today to give away. We've got our Link branded height safety gear. So that is a basic roofer's kit.
Yes.
So within there's a harness, there's a lanyard, there's a rope, everything you sort of need to get up on the roof in a basic scenario.
Great.
So that's a giveaway for the listeners today.
I don't know whether they'll get it.
Well, are you going to get up on the roof anytime soon?
Yeah, I do, mate. I get up there.
There you go.
Yeah, every now and then.
So I'll just get rid of that. But
no, that's good.
So we've got Link, and one of our newest brands within the business is our Medic First Aid brand of products. So
okay.
That's another giveaway for the listeners today as well.
We got lots of stuff. Yep.
So there's a lot there. So Sparkies will go through many different scenarios at work, whether it be up on the roof, whether it be in roof voids, whether it probably be down underground, in pits, wherever it might be. It's pretty down and dirty work, I mean,
Sparkies get a bad rap, but we are basically gods amongst men that harness electrons to travel down a copper conductor and turn equipment on.
Is that right? You guys are gods.
We are basically wizards. Is another word.
What would the other trade say about that? What do plumbers think about that?
Oh, mate, shit runs downhill and payday's Thursday. That's all they worry about.
There you go.
I might need to edit that out. Sorry to all the plumbers out there.
Yeah. You just lost a few listeners, I reckon. What plumbers are going to listen to a Sparky series anyway?
No, they wouldn't listen.
There you go.
They wouldn't know how to work their iPhone.
Is that right?
No.
Okay.
That's why they're plumbers. No, I joke. Love you all.
So there is a lot of so I suppose Paramount Safety. We've been importing and manufacturing and wholesaling products for close to 30 years.
Yeah.
We sell through a network of distributors around the country and distribute through five. So I say five because I include our cousins across the ditch, mate. We've got a warehouse in New Zealand, so we've got warehouses in Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Perth, and Auckland. So the benefit to that is obviously getting our product out to our resellers and the users, very fast.
Great. And where can Sparkies find your equipment mostly?
We've got a huge network of resellers, but businesses like L&H, Lawrence and Hanson, Auslec. I suppose I don't want to seem to favour particular businesses because we've got so many great resellers out there, but there's lots of franchised models, like the Totally Workwears and the Hip Pockets and the Safety Quips, retail, trade, industrial, bit of Mitre 10 and Adam Supply and
great
the like. So
There's plenty of options for them to come 100%. Find it. Mate, we've talked a bit of work. I want to talk to you about sports. It's the underlying theme in this show. You're pretty handy.
Australian,
is that right? Australian champion.
Yeah, Australian double ski champion in 2016.
Yeah.
So that was for those listeners. I'm 43 years old, only a couple of weeks ago. So to have a win, which was actually my first Open gold medal.
Was it?
At the age of, what was that, 4 years ago?
Yeah, okay.
39, 40. Was amazing, and to do it with, with Rhodesy, David Rhodes, was just even better. To share that win with someone else was phenomenal. But
they're the fastest craft without an engine in surf lifesaving.
They're as Darryl Eastlake would put it every year on Nine's Wide Water Sports. They're the F1s of surf lifesaving. So look, it's a fantastic race, and look, I suppose I love ski paddling, and to be able to still be doing it at a high level. We unfortunately missed out on doing Aussies this year due to the COVID restrictions, but I traded Rhodesy in. He got a bit old, so I thought we'd upgrade to a newer model. So I got Dan Bowker, who's another Olympic athlete. Got him on the back. So
perfect.
as an old fella, you've got to keep the young boys on the back, keep pushing.
Yeah, well, you're making them look good, so it's your choice who you put on the back.
Well, exactly right. It's like having a Sparky on the front and a plumber on the back.
Yeah.
Mate. The real workers on the back, the pretty boys up the front.
You're really driving the wedgie. What parallels do you find that you've been able to take from? We talk about it on the pod a lot. I feel like surf lifesaving is one of those sports where the athletes are dedicated way above their the reward, the remuneration, really. So what parallels have you taken from that dedication in surf lifesaving world into business? What do you think, what goes between the two?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I suppose when I look at people who have transitioned from sport into business, is what you see there is, I suppose, in the examples I suppose I've seen, is a commitment, and I suppose it's just a steely resolve to see a result. And in some cases, that probably rubs people the wrong way, because in their sporting career, they've probably just been so focused, they've got the blinkers on, and nothing else matters.
Yeah.
And that can sometimes be seen as, maybe having a bit of an attitude problem or a bit obnoxious. But to be the best, you've sometimes got to, put some of the stuff to the side and not let the small stuff sweat you. So I suppose what I love about seeing good sports people transition into business is just their commitment to making it work. And you get a lot of no's. You have a lot of failures, but the reality is you just got to get back up and keep going. And what I've also seen in that particular person or profile of person is a commitment to wanting to learn and train. And I suppose what I see a lot of time, I do see a lot of times in industry is that people do get paid to do a role, obviously, and they're professionals.
Yeah.
But that's, I suppose, where it stops. I mean, when you look at sporting professionals, what are they doing every day? Right? They're training, repetition. It's those little things that get you, above at the end of the day. If I put it back to paddling a double ski, most people are probably out there doing the same sessions, where 1 minute, 5 minutes, whatever. They're doing a good hour hard session. But I suppose for me, it's those little 1%ers. It might be the skill set. It might be going down to 50 jump starts at a time to get that right. It might be just going out and catching waves. Or as a young fella, growing up in Byron, we've done a lot of skills-based training with some fantastic coaches, where it might be just paddling sideways in the waves for a half an hour down one way and then turning around and coming back and just getting used to that wave hitting you sideways.
Yeah.
Sitting in the break and closing your eyes and trying to stay upright,
Yeah, right.
Those little things help you, what I call the 1%ers, are the things that help you go to that next level. And I suppose that's where I see sports people have that commitment within business to take it to the next level. So
how do we get our sport back as the essential summer sport that it used to be?
Look, I've got a deep love for surf lifesaving. It's been so good to me. I've done it since I was a young fella in Byron Surf Club, right through nippers, right through seniors, and still doing it. I love it. It's a sport that I tell a lot of people that it's a sport forever. Like I grew up around in Byron, as I've said before, and played a bit of footy and surfed and played soccer and all that sort of stuff. But and a lot of my mates did the same thing as well. But I'm not sure how you find it.
Yeah.
But later on in life, no one's really playing football anymore. No one's playing soccer once they get past their 20s or into their 30s. There's a few.
Ramage is the exception.
Well, he is, and he's a good exception too, mate. But I suppose that my point is that surf lifesaving can be forever because it's a low impact sport.
Yes.
You're down the beach. Where else would you want to be? Especially on the Gold Coast.
I feel like it's a culture thing. Like, where else do you want to? That's exactly what it is. Down the beach on a Sunday. The rainy ones, I've found myself sleeping in. I'm not going down the beach. There's been too many good days on the beach to go down there when it's raining, in my opinion. But it is good. It's a good place for your family to spend time.
Yeah.
We every holiday we go on, there's water in some capacity around. So I figure it's got to be a great place for the kids to get their bearings, get confident in the water, surf skills. And I've seen them grow out of not being able to, being scared to go near the waves to, being able to swim out the back to the point now they swim, Archie probably swims better than me. But
mate, it's an amazing sport for that, And when you think about the skills that Nippers teaches, it's a shame that actually it's not transitioning from junior into senior.
Yeah.
And I think that's where more time needs to be spent within surf life saving clubs to sort of try and bridge that gap. Because I mean, look for the listeners out there, I look after Matt's young fella in the under 10s or the under 11s this year.
Yeah.
So we've got last year I think about 70 kids, but as we get on through into the 12s, 13s, and then transition into the seniors, that's going to drop off a lot.
It's hard
because those other
serious,
sports get involved.
But it gets serious too, right? So if you want to go past under 13s or 14s, things like your SRC and your bronze medallion start to come into play, and the craft, whether you like the craft or not, you've got to start to be able to use it. And there's a little bit of time you get asked to give back some of your time too on the weekends, But yeah, the kids seem to have to make that call at 13 or 14, and it's something that I speak to with the boys a lot. Is like, why do kids have to make that call so early? Because to be honest, the seasons have got too long. We're starting Nippers too early.
Oh, September, October, and you're finishing it.
And we finish right in the middle of the beautiful weather. And then, but the winter sports, they start training in January now and want to go through till September. Whereas when we were younger, like there was at least you could do your winter sport and then your summer sport, and you didn't have to choose. But now it's sort of like, well, if you're good at one of those winter sports, they want you around in January, and that's prime surf club season.
Well, you want to be giving your children access to a lot of sports to increase their skill set across a lot of areas, But how do we get the sport back to the heyday? I don't know. I suppose I think back to the days when I was young, a teenager growing up and looking at the heroes, in the Ironman, but also ski paddlers were people that I looked up to as well, and there were some amazing people around. But they I don't know if it was the media that created the profiles for them, but these people were, they were household names, But they were really accessible, I suppose. They were really personable. Are the athletes today not like that? I don't think so. Maybe it might be an administration thing, where the administrators have taken the sport.
I wonder if it's a TV thing too. It used to be on free to air, so you'd have. Correct me if I'm wrong. You'd have the Kellogg series on, or the Nutrigrain series on 9, and you'd have the Uncle Toby's on 10. Rivals. So both cereal companies pouring money in, both TV companies pouring money in, and it's sort of like the TV companies are probably pouring a lot of their money into the footy codes, and there's not a lot of money elsewhere. And then you've got Fox Sports that most of his sports end up on. But I don't know how much funding they've actually got. Yeah. To the point where we saw a few years ago that the lifesaving wasn't even live. It was like 6 weeks later. Yeah. And everyone knew the result. So your prime market, which is people in lifesaving, knew the result before it went to air. Yeah. So
look, I think it probably comes down to the metrics, the data. And I'm sure if you ask the TV stations, maybe back in the heyday when the Tobies was on and you had those serial wars, that there was probably a lot of interest. There probably was a lot of people that actually tuned in to watch it. But over the years, perhaps as the big names sort of, slowly filtered away, the numbers weren't there.
I remember...
And it's an advertising thing, right?
North Burleigh hosted an Uncle Toby's round one year, and Dean and Darren Mercer were allowed to, for some reason, I don't know why, but they were allowed to do the Uncle Toby's that year. And one of them, so I'm butchering this story, but one of them had just had one of their kids, and they said to him, "Oh, so you're an uncle?" And they went, "No, still Kellogg's." Well, funny little story, but
how'd they go?
I can't remember. But I always thought the Uncle Toby's boys were that just next level in the really long Ironman stuff. But Dean and Darren Mercer were freaks.
Who was your favourite growing up?
I just breathed into the microphone. That's what we said. Don't do that. Hendy was the king. Yeah, it was Hendy, and then who? Really, Scotty Reeves. He was the king, but was he your favourite? So I knew Trevor Hendy before I knew about surf lifesaving.
You need to get Trev on here, mate. He's a local.
I'd have him on in a heartbeat.
Okay,
but you know what I mean. So that's transcending the sport. I wasn't a nipper until I was like 13, but I knew who Trevor Hendy was when I was a little kid.
He was a household name.
He was a household
as a lot
name.
of them were. Yeah.
I think, obviously, once I joined North Burleigh, obviously I followed like Scotty Reeves because he was a North Burleigh contestant, had the reverse North Burleigh cap.
Yep.
I think we had Kai Hurst at the club for a little bit there.
Yep.
Rat, Leon Hay, obviously we followed all those
legend.
guys.
Yep. Mate, we've had some good guys come through the club.
Definitely.
But it's so good to actually see some of those legends of the sport. You know, Trev's still heavily involved in Surfers Paradise Surf Club. I think still won an Aussie medal there with his young fella.
That was crazy.
What was that? Maybe 2013. You know, so pretty recently, really. Board rescue.
The one with TJ was more recent than that.
Was it more recent?
I'm
okay,
sure
there
it was.
you go. I probably got the dates wrong. But you've got Guy Andrews, who's down and active with Talabudra Surf Club, and Guy does a bit of paddling with us every now and then.
Yeah.
And, he was one of my favourites growing up. You know, he's a big hero of mine because he was tenacious. You know, he had a heart like a lion.
Yeah, he was
whilst he might not have had the tall physique of the big guys, man, he was ferocious. You know.
What do you think of the CrossFit type stuff they brought in for the last round of summer?
Look, I suppose that could be, a decision where I suppose numbers and data and I suppose projections on where the trends are going. You know, CrossFit's a massive sport. Surf life saving probably need a bit of an injection. Whilst I'm the traditional side, I just think surf life saving could still really pitch a very good story and a very good product to go live.
They need to go. Beach flags needs to become
no doubt about it.
Needs to become the central focus of surf life saving.
I'm not so sure on the sand scratches, but you can go build some sandcastles on the backside of the grandstands. But no, look, the beach flaggers are great, mate. All the surf life saving events, but I definitely think they could be doing. Go back to the heyday and get that support that they once had, and I don't think they really need CrossFit to be involved. Whilst that was a nice little thing to probably spike some interest, and it might actually lead in the right way.
I don't reckon.
I'm not sure what the actual intention was, but it.
Other than Kane, I don't reckon any of them got across the monkey bars without slipping.
Is that right? Well, I don't think I would have either, mate. But
I don't know. I know. I wouldn't have.
It would have been a good fun one to have a go at that.
Yeah. It's. I worry about this year. I think it's going to. Obviously, there's bigger problems in the world than surf life saving, but it's going to be a tough year. All of our clubs that traditionally would earn money through the back end of summer and then through winter, through their restaurants and whatnot, have not had any funding. They've all been closed. And they're only just starting to open up.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
That flows down into junior programs, into coaching, and into what those clubs can spend. I worry that that'll put the sport back a little bit even more. Like we've already seen some coaching movement around the coast and some athlete movement, which you could look at it two ways. You could look at that and go, oh, well, bloody, the big club's poaching talent again, or I look at it the other way. I think, well, if that big club's got some cash at the moment and they can keep those guys professional while some of the other clubs recover, it's probably not a bad thing.
Yeah, well, look, look, open up a can of worms there, aren't you? So, you see who went recently, Bevy and Pooley to Northcliffe, and look, mate, they're professionals. So, if that's their income, I don't begrudge anyone for trying to go and earn that. But you definitely do see a lot of musical chairs every year with people moving around with the coaches and whatnot. But look, I suppose we'll just focus on our little backyard, which is North Burleigh, and
we've got a massive crop of nippers that are going to.
Well, we do, and hopefully what we're breeding there is obviously that word loyalty, but knowing also that you don't necessarily need a huge group of people in a big club to be successful. And we've seen in many clubs and many people be very successful in their own rights. And it all comes down to one thing. And it's not what a coach can do for you. It's not what the club can do for you. It's what you do for yourself and your commitment and the time and the effort you actually put into it. If you don't put the time and effort into it, you're not going to get the result. Simple. Yeah. So it doesn't matter where you do that. Some of the best athletes that I suppose you and I know have probably been more successful training in environments where it's only been them or a few others. So, someone like, I'm not sure, was Courtney really?
Yep.
I mean, I think he may have been someone who'd done a lot of training on his own, might have had small groups, but generally quite alone.
He told us a story of riding to the Southport pool car park and doing laps of it before he went to swimming training. So he was doing that on his own as a young fella.
So there's those things, those little 1%ers that no one actually hears about. I'm not sure if it was true or not, but I heard before I joined the swim squads up the Gold Coast, that athletes like Carla Gilbert would jump in the pool and obviously do the swim session, and then long after everyone's gone, she was still doing laps, kickboards, and she was a champion. It's those little bit extra that the champs do that get you to the next level. And there's probably a lot of people out there scratching their heads thinking, what do I need to do here? But
the extras,
the extras, absolutely. Lock down and have a crack. Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
Hey, I could talk all night. We've got some gear here. I think should we tell people to stay tuned to the social media channels, and we'll work out how we're going to give away this gear.
Yeah, 100%. So there's a bit of Thor's gear there. There's plenty of Pro Choice gear there. There's a Link height safety kit. There's a medic first aid kit. So there's everything really there for a Sparky.
Yeah.
So I think.
Do you want to do all, or do you want to break it up and do a couple of different giveaways there?
I think we might break it up a little to spread the love. And I suppose we'll put our social media handles on your page. And get a few likes and shares. I think that's what they do these days.
Do you want to do LinkedIn or Facebook, or where's your strongest platform?
Look, I mean, I think this is a very professional podcast, Matt, you're running here. So it's high quality, high
amateur
level.
Amateur hour.
I'm sure the viewing numbers are going to go through the roof after this. So, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, anyways, I think we'll put that on social, mate. I think the guys love it.
Yep, perfect.
Yeah.
So stay tuned to the Paramount Safety and the Beers and Banter socials. We'll work out how we're going to give this stuff away. I've got the big three questions for every guest.
Big three.
I worded you up, so I'm expecting some good answers. Favourite place in the world for a beer?
Ooh, can I give you two?
Yeah.
Well, the back deck.
The back deck.
The back deck. The back deck of my house.
Yep.
So, I mean, as a young fella, used to like going out there and having a beer at a lot of different establishments, but you'd pay through the roof for beers and then you'd struggle to get a seat and struggle to hear anyone. But I'll tell you what, sitting on the back deck having a beer with a few of your mates, I'll tell you, it doesn't get much better.
Can't beat it.
But look, other than that, I grew up in Byron Bay.
Yep.
I think I had my first beer at the Beach Hotel. So that's that's
the second time we've had the Beach Hotel.
Is that right? There you go. So it was an establishment that a lot of the paddlers from there would go over every Friday night after a lap around the rock, Julian Rocks.
Pretty good spot.
And Mate's Magic. Beautiful.
Righto. Favourite athlete of all time? They don't have to be the greatest, just your favourite athlete
look,
of all
my
time.
favourite. Look, I know it sounds like I'm going to be on the bandwagon here, but I'm a Jordan fan, so I'm going to have to say Jordan.
So you would have watched The Last Dance?
Yeah. Look, I loved it. I think he's fantastic, and I mean, we talked a little bit about that commitment to being great, and how that might sometimes be mistaken as someone being a bit of a prick or having attitude or whatever. But without his commitment to wanting to be great, that team would have never been where it was.
He could have essentially changed sports in general.
Yeah.
Coming out of the 80s. The 80s they were professionals, but I feel like sports in the 90s just went to another level
It did.
Professionalism. And
it was amazing. That Bulls team,
he would have been at the centre of that.
And just the athletes around him as well were pretty amazing as well, with Pippen and Rodman, and you had the Aussie connection there with Longley as well. So that was pretty cool to see as well.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Righto, last one. Any 4 people from history over for a beer? Who's coming and what are you cooking?
Oh, that is a tough one. Can I give 2 answers to that one?
So we got 4.
No. Well, I want to give you.
You want 2 groups?
I want 2 groups.
Okay.
So look, I suppose and I'm going to steal this one from Courtney because I did see it the other week. Is nothing better than having a beer with your family and your mates.
Yes.
So, mum and dad and my wife and kids and my brothers and your best mates. That just doesn't get much better. Having that beer with those people, you know them intimately. You know the struggles that they're going through and the highs and the lows, and having a beer with them is great.
It was the thing I missed most out of COVID-19 was just literally just having a barbecue and being allowed to have people at your house.
It's the simple things, isn't it? It's amazing.
People are like, I can't wait to go out to dinner. I can't wait to go to the pub. It's like, yeah, the pub's good, but I really just want my close group of friends or my close family to be able to come around for a beer would be nice.
Yeah. So if I was to choose some celebs out there, I'd love to have a chat to Jordan. I'd have him around. Look, as I told you before the podcast, and I've really refrained from trying to breathe too deep into the microphone, but there's a guy I've been listening to a little bit on podcasts, and he's sort of his method around breathing, and his name's Wim Hof.
Wim Hof.
And look him up, listeners.
Okay.
Look, it's been fantastic for me. It's all about breathing, and I suppose
I do it daily.
You do the breathing?
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
Try to.
Yeah, it's important. Stay on your 2 feet, you need to breathe, that's for sure. But it's a specific breathing sort of method which helps, I suppose, relax you, de-stress, reduce anxiety, helps bring a bit of energy to yourself. And look, I'll tell you what, for me in the last few months, it's been, it's been fantastic and well worth a look up.
I'll have to look that up.
So Jordan, Wim, I would have... look, I suppose I haven't thought too much beyond that. I'd probably have some, because look, Jordan he loves a cigar and a good time, and he'd have some great stories. Wim, I think he likes a beer as well, and he does some pretty extreme stuff. They call him the Iceman. Yeah. So he gets into some pretty extreme scenarios. So he'd have some good stories too.
Yeah. What was his background then? What's he do?
He's from the one of the Nordic countries. Yeah. And he had a pretty hard run there, I think, with his wife. That and don't quote me on this, mate. That might have passed away in unfortunate circumstances. But a lot of stress, bringing up the kids. Needed to find a way to sort of break free of the stress and get the body back aligned and healthy. So it's a pretty good story, and it's a really good method. So. Worth having a look. Look, other than that, I suppose some of the people that have a big influence on my life in growing up, there's a coach of mine back in the Byron days, Max Abbott, who was always good for a story. Yeah. And once you start him, you can't stop him. Yeah. Love you, Max. And so he'd be good around for a barbecue. Mate, the fourth. That's a hard question, Matty. I know I'm starting to yabber on a bit here, but I don't know. I'll think about that one later. Righto. What am I cooking? I love a bit of seafood. Yeah. Prawns, salmon, and a few stone and woods, mate. Perfect. Simple. Sounds like a good on the back deck. Yep, absolutely. Sounds good. Yeah. Well, I think we might wrap it up there. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. Well, it's been a pleasure. Welcome back anytime. I'm just going to do a little plug. We get lots of support from the guys at Gripstar. So Gripstar anti-slip socks feature panels that create traction that improve speed, acceleration and stability. Gripstar socks are designed to deliver maximum comfort and flexibility, featuring a breathable mesh design that removes sweat and reduces odours. Perfect for movement, sports, working on your feet or lounging safely at home. Well Sorry, done. Jolie, I butchered that, but I'll get better. That's the first time I've read that one. In other words, go and find yourself some Gripstar socks. Absolutely. They're the goods. Get amongst it. Bear, thanks for coming on. Mate, absolute pleasure. Thanks, listeners. And look, stay tuned to the socials. Absolutely. At Beers and Banter. And where can they find Paramount? At Pro Choice Safety. Okay, perfect. On Insta. Cheers. Yep, cheers, mate. Thanks, buddy.